I am 82 years old now. And before I start, please, if you're listening, subscribe and comment so others can hear my story. Maybe someone out there needs to know they're not alone. I am sitting by the window of my little wooden house in Indiana, and the wind feels like a voice from my past. I thought I had buried it all. But last night I had a dream, the same one. The day I found out I was carrying his child and my mama was too. My stepfather, the man who destroyed everything. I remember that day like it is happening now. The smell of fried bacon from Mama's kitchen. The sound of a truck rolling by our dusty road. And me, sitting on the porch, too sick to eat, my stomach twisting. Mama came out with that same pale look, holding her belly like she was holding back a storm. She didn't even have to tell me. I already knew. It was him, the same man who had been sneaking into my room for months while Mama worked nights at the diner. His name was Lowell. He had wide shoulders and a smile that fooled the whole town. Everyone thought he was a savior to a broken family. They didn't know the devil can wear a clean shirt. It started so slow, like a shadow creeping in. By the time I understood, I was already locked in his world. And that morning, with Mama staring at me, both of us sick with the same shame, I wished lightning would strike our house and burn it all down. I told her everything that day. My voice trembled like a leaf in a storm. She listened. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood there with her hand over her mouth, like someone had stolen her breath. Then she whispered, "Me too." Those two words wrapped around my neck like a noose. We were both victims of the same man, under the same roof, and now we both carried his children. The silence that followed felt like the end of the world. We didn't know what to do. Who would believe us? The sheriff played cards with Lowell every Friday night. The pastor praised him from the pulpit, and the neighbors only saw what they wanted to see. A hard-working man who fixed fences and carried groceries for old folks. That night, I locked my door, but it didn't matter. His footsteps came anyway. That was when I made a decision. I would tell the world one day. Maybe not now, but one day. The house where it all happened is gone now. Torn down, replaced by a strip mall. But I can still smell the rotten wood of those floors. I can still hear Mama crying into her pillow, thinking I was asleep. And I can still hear Lowell's laughter through the thin walls. People say time heals everything. They are wrong. Time only buries it under new layers. Sometimes the earth shakes and brings everything back up. That night, after Lowell came to my room again, I snuck out barefoot and walked to the field behind our house. I looked up at the stars, and I prayed for the first time in years. I prayed for a way out. I didn't know if God was listening. I only knew I couldn't stay. I couldn't let him destroy both of us. The frost bit my feet, but I didn't care. For a moment, I felt free. When I went back inside, Mama was waiting for me in the kitchen. Her eyes were red, but there was a fire in them I had never seen before. She whispered, "We can't live like this anymore. We have to do something." That was the first time I realized Mama might have a plan. But what could two broken women do against a man the whole town adored? I didn't know. And before I could ask, I heard the creak of his boots on the porch. Lowell stepped in, carrying a six-pack, his face red from drinking. He looked at me, then at Mama, and smiled like a snake. And in that moment, something changed in the room. The air turned heavy, like the world itself was holding its breath. Mama glanced at me, and I saw her hand slide into the drawer where we kept the knives. And that's when everything in my life started to unravel. Mama's fingers brushed the handle of the knife, but she didn't pull it out. I don't know if it was fear or caution that stopped her. Maybe both. I sat there frozen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Lowell dropped the six-pack on the table and grabbed a chair like he owned everything in that kitchen. The stench of beer mixed with the smell of fried bacon still clinging to the air. He asked why we looked so serious. His voice was playful, but his eyes were sharp as broken glass. Mama just stared at him. She didn't answer. I could feel my stomach twisting, knowing that if I opened my mouth, I would spill everything I had been holding inside. I could not bear one more second of his smirk. So I stood up, and that's when he grabbed my wrist. The grip was hard, harder than it needed to be. "Where you going?" he asked like I was a child. I pulled back and I said, "Out." My voice didn't sound like mine anymore. It sounded like someone who had been pushed too far. He let go, but the way he looked at me, I knew this wasn't over. I stepped out into the cold night, and I heard Mama's voice behind me, low but fierce. "Lowell, we need to talk." I hid on the porch, pressed against the wall, listening. Mama told him she was pregnant. I heard the beer can hiss as he opened it like it was nothing. He laughed, and said, "Well, ain't that something?" Then she told him I was too. The laughter stopped. I held my breath. For a long time, there was silence, then the sound of the chair scraping back. "You keep your mouth shut," he said, his voice like gravel. "Both of you. Nobody's gonna believe a word." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the porch swing, shivering, watching the horizon turn gray. My whole world had become a prison. I thought about running away, but where would I go? With what money? And what about Mama? I couldn't leave her behind. So I made a promise to myself. I would find a way out. Somehow. A week later, everything changed. A stranger came to our town. A man named Oswin. He was looking for work, fixing fences and painting barns. He came to our house one morning, and Mama paid him to mend the roof. He didn't know our story, but he saw something. He asked me if I was okay. Just 3 little words, but I hadn't heard them in so long I almost cried. That was the first time I thought maybe, just maybe, there was hope. Lowell didn't like Oswin. He said he didn't trust drifters. But I saw something different. I saw a chance. A person outside our nightmare. Every day, while he fixed the roof, I talked to him in whispers. Not about the bad things, just about the weather, the crops, the sky. He listened. He made me feel like I was still human. Then one afternoon, while Lowell was out drinking, I told him. I told Oswin everything. My voice shook, but I let it all out. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "You don't deserve this. Neither of you do. You need to get out." It was the first time anyone had said those words to me. When Lowell came home that night, there was a storm brewing. Lightning cracked the sky, and the rain pounded on the roof Oswin had just fixed. Mama and I sat in the kitchen waiting. She had a suitcase by her feet. I had one too, and we both held our breath when we heard the sound of Lowell's truck in the driveway. We were ready to leave, but that night, before we could open the door, someone else came in first. The door burst open with a crash so loud I thought the storm itself had kicked it in. Water poured in around a tall figure, rain dripping from a battered coat. It was Oswin. His eyes found mine first, then Mama's. His voice came out like thunder. "You're leaving tonight. Now." Behind him, lightning split the sky, throwing his shadow across the floor. For a second, I couldn't tell if this was real or another one of my dreams. Mama stood up, gripping the suitcase handle so tight her knuckles turned white. She whispered, "What about Lowell?" That was when I saw it, Oswin's hand. It was bleeding. There was a long, red cut across his palm. He said, "Don't worry about him. He's not coming home for a while." My stomach turned cold. I didn't ask what he meant. I just knew this was our only chance. We moved fast. Mama and I grabbed the suitcases, and Oswin held the door open against the wind. The truck outside was old, rusted around the fenders, but it was running. We ran through the rain, water soaking us to the bone. My heart beat like a drum, every step echoing, "Go, go, go!" When I climbed into that truck, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, hope. It was fragile, but it was there. As we pulled out of the driveway, I looked back. The house stood there in the storm, dark, lifeless, but still watching us like a curse. I swore to myself that I would never return. Lightning flashed behind it, and for a moment I imagined Lowell standing at the window. I closed my eyes and held Mama's hand. Oswin drove us through the night, past cornfields and dark woods. The rain didn't let up. Mama didn't speak. She just stared out the window, her lips moving like she was praying. I tried to speak, to ask where we were going, but my throat closed up. I just listened to the hum of the engine and the rain. That sound felt like freedom. Hours later, when the rain finally slowed, Oswin pulled into a dirt driveway leading to a small, broken-down cabin deep in the woods. "You'll be safe here," he said. "At least for now." Mama hesitated before stepping inside. It smelled like old wood and dust, but it was dry and the roof didn't leak. It was better than anything we'd had for months. I sat on the floor and let myself breathe for the first time in a long time. But safety doesn't erase fear. That night, lying on a mattress on the cabin floor, I couldn't sleep. Every crack of a branch outside made me think of Lowell's boots on the porch. I couldn't stop imagining him finding us, dragging us back. Mama must have felt it too, because she reached for my hand in the dark. "We'll be okay," she whispered. Her voice shook, but I wanted to believe her. The next morning, Oswin came with food. Bread, canned beans, a few apples. He said he had a friend in another town who could help us. But before we could talk about what came next, we heard it. The sound of a truck on the dirt road. Mama froze. I looked at Oswin, and his face went pale. We all knew who it had to be. The truck engine stopped right outside the cabin. Boots hit the wet ground. Slow, heavy steps came closer, crunching leaves. Mama grabbed my arm. My heart was so loud, I thought the man outside could hear it. The steps stopped just outside the door. Then, in a voice I will never forget, Lowell called out, "You think you can run from me?" The door rattled as Lowell's fist slammed against it. "Open this door," he shouted. His voice was like thunder rolling through the cabin. Mama clutched my arm tighter, her nails digging into my skin. Oswin stepped in front of us, his back straight, fists clenched. "Stay behind me," he said. I could barely breathe. The walls of that little cabin felt like they were closing in. Lowell kicked the door so hard the wood cracked. Dust rained from the ceiling. "You think you can steal my family?" he yelled. "Come out now, or I'll drag you both out myself." My legs wouldn't move. My throat burned with the scream I was holding in. Mama whispered, "He'll kill us." Oswin turned his head slightly. "Not while I'm standing here," he said. Then, in a blur, the door burst open. Lowell stormed in, wet from the rain, eyes bloodshot and wild. His face twisted into something that wasn't human. He went for Mama first, his hand raised, but Oswin grabbed his arm and shoved him back. The sound of their bodies colliding was so loud it echoed. I had never seen anyone stand up to Lowell before. For the first time he looked surprised. They fought, fists flying, boots slipping on the wet floor. The room spun around me. Mama pulled me back into the corner, shielding me with her body. I wanted to close my eyes, but I couldn't. I had to see it. I had to see someone finally fight for us. Oswin grunted with every punch, but Lowell was strong, fueled by anger and beer. It was chaos. Then something happened I will never forget. Oswin reached for a heavy iron pan on the stove. He swung it with all his strength. The sound when it hit Lowell's head was sickening. A deep, hollow thud. Lowell collapsed, his body hitting the floor so hard the whole cabin shook. Silence fell, broken only by my shaky breath. I thought he was dead. I thought it was over. But then I saw his chest rising. He was alive. Mama knelt beside me, shaking, whispering, "What do we do now?" Oswin looked at us, sweat and rain dripping from his face. "We leave. Now, before he wakes up." I grabbed the suitcase. Mama grabbed hers. We stepped over Lowell's body and out into the cold morning air. The truck roared to life. I looked back one last time and I saw him, Lowell, still on the floor, his hand twitching, his eyes half open, filled with hate. I knew this wasn't the end. As we drove away, Mama whispered, "He'll come after us." I didn't answer. My chest felt like it was splitting apart. I just stared at the road ahead, waiting for what was coming. For the next few days, we hid in Oswin's truck, moving from town to town, sleeping in parking lots, eating whatever we could find. Mama's belly was starting to show and mine was too. We couldn't hide forever. We needed a real plan. But every time we stopped, I saw fear in her eyes. Fear that any truck pulling in behind us would be him. Late one night, Oswin pulled into a quiet church parking lot. "This is where we stop," he said. The church lights were off, but the doors were unlocked. Inside, the air smelled like candle wax and old wood. We knelt at the altar. I didn't know what to pray for anymore. Safety? Strength? Revenge? Maybe all of it. Mama cried quietly beside me. That night, as we tried to sleep on the hard church pews, I heard a noise outside. Tires on gravel. Doors closing. Voices. My blood went cold. I crawled to the window, and in the dim light I saw a familiar shape. A truck. Not Oswin's. Lowell had found us. I shook Mama awake, and Oswin grabbed the iron pan he had brought with him. But this time there were two shadows outside. Two men. The door creaked open. Heavy boots stepped inside. Lowell's voice came first, smooth, slow, and deadly calm. "You made me chase you all the way here, and now I'm going to take back what's mine." And then, from behind him, came a gunshot. The sound of that gunshot cracked the night like lightning. I dropped to the floor, my ears ringing. For a moment, I didn't know where it came from. Then I saw it. One of the shadows outside had fallen. A man I'd never seen before lay on the gravel, groaning, clutching his leg. Lowell spun around, confused. Another shot rang out, this time hitting the wooden door frame, sending splinters into the church. Mama screamed and dragged me behind the pews. Oswin stood in the aisle, his face pale but steady. "Stay down," he said, holding the iron pan like it was a shield. He didn't have a gun. I peeked over the pew. The second man outside was holding a rifle. He wasn't aiming at us, he was aiming at Lowell. "I told you," the man yelled, "leave them alone." The voice sounded angry, familiar somehow, like someone who had been waiting for this moment. Lowell stumbled backward, rage twisting his face. "You don't know what you're getting into," he shouted. The rifleman stepped into the dim church light. He was older, hair silver at the edges, wearing a heavy hunting jacket. His name, I would learn later, was Jareth. He wasn't there for us. He was there for Lowell. and he had been tracking him for weeks. That night, the sins of my stepfather caught up to him. "Get out," Jareth ordered. Lowell hesitated, then lunged at him. Another gunshot fired, this time hitting Lowell in the shoulder. He screamed, collapsing to the church floor, blood spreading across his shirt. The rifle dropped for a second. That was all the time Oswin needed. He grabbed Lowell's arm, twisting it behind his back, forcing him down. The fight drained out of him like water down a drain. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. The sheriff came half an hour later. Jareth had called him on a radio he kept in his truck. I thought this was it, that justice would finally come. But when the sheriff walked in, his eyes softened the moment he saw Lowell. They knew each other. My heart sank. The sheriff didn't see the bruises. He didn't see our swollen bellies. He saw a man he'd played cards with, a man who fixed fences for neighbors. And just like that, I knew the law was not on our side. Mama spoke up. She told the sheriff everything, every word shaking. I told him too, my voice breaking in places I didn't know could break. Jareth backed us, swearing to what he'd seen. Still, the sheriff hesitated. "This is a serious accusation," he said. "You sure you want to ruin a man's life with this?" My blood boiled. It wasn't just a man's life. It was ours. At last, maybe because of the gunshot wound, maybe because of Jareth's presence, the sheriff agreed to take Lowell into custody for the night. But even as they dragged him away, he looked back at me with a smile that froze my blood. "This isn't over," he whispered. It was a promise. Not a threat. A promise. That night we stayed in the church. I thought I would finally sleep, but my mind was a storm. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. I heard his boots. I remembered the nights he came into my room. And now, even with him behind bars for a few hours, I still couldn't feel safe. Mama sat beside me, stroking my hair like she used to when I was small. "We'll leave town tomorrow," she whispered. "We'll go somewhere far away." When dawn came, Oswin drove us to the edge of the county. Jareth followed in his truck. He said he would keep an eye on things, make sure Lowell couldn't follow us for a while. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew Lowell's anger would not rest. Men like him never let go. We found a small apartment in a rundown part of another town. It wasn't much. 1 bedroom, thin walls, a broken lock on the front door. But it was away from the house, away from the church, away from the people who turned their faces from our pain. Mama and I tried to build something there. Something small, something safe. But safety is not something you can pack in a suitcase. Weeks passed. My belly grew heavier. Mama's too. We worked small jobs, cleaning houses, sewing clothes. Every time a truck drove by, my chest tightened. And then one evening, just as the sky turned pink, I saw him. Lowell, across the street, leaning against a pole. Watching. He had found us again. I froze when I saw him. He didn't move. He didn't shout. He just stood there with his hands in his pockets, like a wolf waiting for the right moment. My body went numb. I grabbed Mama's hand, pulled her back inside, locked the door. We stood in the dark, listening. His footsteps never came. After an hour, I peeked through the curtain. He was gone, but I knew it wasn't over. It was only beginning. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept spinning. How had he found us? Did someone tell him? Did he follow us all this way? Oswin said he hadn't seen him since that night at the church. Jareth had promised to keep him away. But now here he was, outside our window like a ghost. My fear turned to anger. I had to do something. I couldn't let him take any more from us. 2 days later it happened. Mama went to the grocery store, and I stayed home, sewing. The door creaked open behind me. I thought it was Mama. When I turned around, my blood turned cold. Lowell stood in the doorway. He looked different this time, thinner, paler, eyes like burning coal. "Miss me," he said, stepping inside. My hand shook so bad I dropped the needle. I backed away, my voice barely a whisper. "You're not supposed to be here." He laughed. "Supposed to," he said. "You think a little town sheriff and some fool with a rifle can keep me from my family?" His boots echoed on the wooden floor as he walked toward me. I reached for the phone on the counter, but he was faster. He knocked it away, the crash loud in the small room. He grabbed my wrist, pulling me so close I could smell the alcohol on his breath. "You're going to come back with me," he said. "Both of you. And we're going to pretend like none of this ever happened. Understand?" I yanked my arm back with all the strength I had. "No," I said. My voice cracked, but the word was loud. It surprised even me. For the first time, I said no. Before he could react, the door slammed open again. Mama stood there, holding a hammer. She didn't hesitate. She swung. The hammer hit his arm, and he howled, stumbling back. I ran for the phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. "Help!" I screamed into the receiver. "He's here!" He broke in. The sirens came, fast this time. Maybe luck was finally on our side. They dragged him out, handcuffs clinking. He was shouting, cursing, calling us liars. Mama stood in the doorway, shaking, tears running down her face. I held her, both of us sobbing, watching as they shoved him into the back of the car. "It's over," the officer said. But I knew better. I knew Lowell too well. The court case that followed tore the whole town apart. Some believed us. Many didn't. People whispered when we walked into stores. They called us names I won't repeat. But we told our story, every ugly, painful detail. And for once, the truth was louder than the lies. The judge sentenced him to prison. It wasn't forever, but it was enough to give us room to breathe. Months later, I gave birth to a little boy. Mama had a girl. We loved those babies with all the strength we had left. They were innocent. They were hope. And for a while there was peace. But at night, when the house was quiet, I still heard his voice. I still felt the weight of those boots on the floorboards. And I knew someday, somehow, we'd have to face him again. I didn't know that day would come sooner than I thought. One summer morning, years later, I got a letter. It was from the prison. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sentence, written in his crooked handwriting. "I'm coming home." The letter felt heavier than paper should. I stared at those 3 words over and over until the ink blurred. "I'm coming home." It was like the walls closed in on me. My breath came shallow. Mama walked into the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "What's that?" she asked. I couldn't answer. My lips moved, but no sound came out. She took the letter from me, read it, and sank into a chair like someone had pulled the ground out from under her. We had tried so hard to build a life after that nightmare. We had new names in a new town. I worked at a laundromat. Mama cleaned offices, and our 2 little ones, my boy and her girl, were finally smiling again. We had a rhythm. Simple days. Quiet nights. But the moment that letter came, everything we'd built cracked. The past wasn't past anymore. It was walking right back through our door. That night, we didn't sleep. We sat in the living room with the curtains closed tight, talking in whispers. "Do we run again?" I asked. Mama shook her head. "We can't keep running. We've got these babies now. We can't live in fear forever." Her voice trembled, but there was steel under it. "We'll face him," she said. "And this time, we won't let him take anything else from us." I wanted to believe her, but my heart felt like a trapped bird. The next few weeks were torture. Every knock on the door made me jump. Every truck engine outside made me freeze. I started carrying a knife in my bag. Mama hid a hammer under the couch. Even the children noticed. They asked why Grandma looked sad all the time. We told them it was just work. But even at their young age, they sensed the storm brewing. One hot July afternoon, as I was folding laundry at work, a shadow fell across the counter. I looked up, and there he was, Lowell. He was thinner, older, his hair streaked with gray, but those eyes hadn't changed. Cold. Empty. My hands froze. He smiled like he had every right to be there. "Heard you've been busy," he said. My stomach knotted so hard I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, but my voice was gone. "I don't want trouble," I whispered. He leaned closer, his breath hot. "Oh, you already got it," he said. "I told you I'd come back. And I always keep my promises." He tapped the counter twice and walked out like nothing happened. My knees gave out. I sat on the floor, shaking, holding my belly like it could keep me from falling apart. When I got home, Mama was waiting. She knew from my face before I even spoke. We locked every door and window. We didn't leave the house for 2 days. On the third day, Oswin came. Somehow he had heard. He had his old truck parked out front. His face was serious. "You can't stay here," he said. "He's out now. He'll make good on his threats." I wanted to argue, but deep down I knew he was right. That night we packed again. It felt like a curse. Suitcases, fear, running from town to town. But as we loaded the truck, I saw my boy sleeping in Mama's arms, his little hands curled up. I thought of her baby girl too, cheeks soft as peaches. They deserved better than this. They deserved a life without hiding. I swore I'd give it to them. We drove through the night once again. The road ahead was empty, but my chest felt like it carried 1,000 pounds. I kept looking out the back window, expecting to see headlights following us. But the highway stretched out behind us like a black ribbon, silent. I thought maybe, just maybe, we could slip away one more time. And then, just before dawn, we saw them. Headlights. Getting closer. It was him. The glow of the headlights burned into the back of my skull. "Oswin," I whispered, my voice shaking. He glanced in the mirror, his jaw tightening. "Hold on," he said, and pressed his foot to the gas. The old truck roared louder than it had in years. The babies stirred in their sleep as the speedometer climbed. My hands clung to the seat like it could stop the shaking inside me. The headlights behind us didn't slow. They got closer, closer, until they were right on our tail, blinding us. I could see his silhouette behind the wheel. Lowell. His truck swerved left, then right, trying to push us off the road. "He's going to kill us." Mama cried. Oswin's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "Not if I can help it," he said. He took a sharp turn onto a dirt road. Gravel flew. My head hit the window, but I held on. We raced through the back roads, trees blurring past. Lowell stayed right behind us, his horn blaring like an angry beast. Then I heard it, the sound of metal slamming metal. His truck hit our bumper. Once. Twice. The whole truck jolted forward. The babies woke, crying. Mama held them tight, whispering prayers between sobs. "Please, God. Please." My own prayers got stuck in my throat. Up ahead, the road split. Oswin veered left, toward an old wooden bridge I hadn't seen in years. "Hold on," he shouted. The bridge groaned as we sped onto it, boards clattering under the tires. Behind us, Lowell's truck followed. Then, halfway across, there was a loud crack. The boards splintered under his wheels. His truck tilted to the side. I watched in slow motion as his headlights swerved. His truck crashing into the railing. Wood shattered. And just like that, he was gone, falling into the dark water below. For a moment, there was only silence. No headlights. No horn. Just the sound of water roaring beneath the bridge. Oswin didn't slow until we reached the other side. We stopped on a dirt patch, our hearts pounding so hard I could hear them. We all climbed out, breathless, staring back at the broken bridge. The river swallowed the truck whole. There was no sign of him. Mama sank to her knees, sobbing into her hands. I stood there, frozen, waiting to see if he would climb out, crawl up the bank, appear like a nightmare. But nothing came, only the water. The dawn painted the sky orange and pink, like the world didn't know what we had just been through. Oswin put his hand on my shoulder. "It's over," he said, but I couldn't believe it. "Not yet. People like him don't just disappear," I said. And even as I said it, I couldn't tell if I wanted it to be true or not. Part of me wanted him gone forever. Another part of me feared what would happen if he came back again. We didn't stay to see what the river would do with him. We left. Another town, another name, another life to rebuild from the ashes. It became our cycle, but something had shifted that day. For the first time I saw him fall. For the first time I saw him lose. And that memory carried me through the years. In the new town, life slowly began again. I worked 2 jobs. Mama cared for the children. They grew up with different last names, different stories. We never told them everything. How could we? They were the only good thing to come from a nightmare. And as time passed, the shadow of Lowell faded. We didn't speak his name anymore. But deep down in the corners of my mind, I kept one truth close. I didn't see a body. I didn't see him die. And so, every time the phone rang, every time a stranger knocked on the door, my heart still paused. Because somewhere out there, in the dark places the river couldn't wash clean, I knew he was waiting. And 20 years later, I was proven right. 20 years passed. I raised my boy, Mama raised her girl. They became good, kind souls, everything we prayed they would be. For a while, it felt like life had let us go. I worked at a small diner, serving coffee to truckers and farmers. The years softened my face, silvered my hair, but the fear never left. It just hid under the surface, like something buried deep in the earth, waiting. One autumn evening, the diner was quiet. The air smelled of coffee and pumpkin pie. I was wiping down a table when the bell over the door rang. I didn't look up at first. Just another customer, I thought. But then a voice I thought I'd never hear again said my name. My real name. The one I'd buried 20 years ago. My hands froze. Slowly I turned. And there he was. Lowell. Older. Scar on his temple from the crash. His eyes still sharp as broken glass. My body locked up. "You look just like her," he said softly, almost tenderly. Then he smiled, and I saw the same snake that had haunted me all my life. "You thought a river could stop me," he whispered. "It takes more than that to kill me." I stumbled backward. My breath came in sharp gasps. "Get out," I said. He leaned on the counter, as if we were old friends catching up. "I've been patient," he said. 20 years patient. Now I want what's mine. You. The kids. Everything." His voice was calm, too calm, and that terrified me more than the shouting ever did. I ran to the phone behind the counter and called the police. My voice shook as I begged them to come. By the time I hung up, Lowell was gone. Just like smoke. When the police arrived, they found nothing. No footprints. No truck. Just me, trembling in the middle of the diner, trying to breathe. They told me it was probably a dream, a trick of my mind. But I knew better. I knew he was back. That night, I sat my grown boy down and told him everything. Every ugly detail. He listened, his face pale, fists clenched. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked. My eyes filled with tears. "I wanted you to have a chance to be happy," I said, "not to grow up in fear like I did." He held me, and for the first time in years I felt strong again. Strong enough to face whatever was coming. We told Mama. She was older now, slower, but the fire in her eyes hadn't dimmed. "We can't let him ruin our lives again," she said. "We stand together this time. We fight." And for the first time, it wasn't just me and her. It was us, a family. We weren't running anymore. Days passed. Every time I walked to work, I felt eyes on me. At night, we heard trucks outside, engines idling, but when we looked out, nothing was there. Then, one evening, my son came home pale. He talked to me, he said. My heart stopped. What did he say? I whispered. My son swallowed hard. He said he wants to meet. Said if we don't, someone we love will get hurt. Mama reached for my hand. Her fingers were cold as ice. We all knew what this meant. We couldn't hide. We couldn't pretend he wasn't real. He wanted us to come to him, to walk back into his trap. And as much as I wanted to burn that letter and stay locked inside forever, I knew we couldn't. The meeting place was a small cabin on the edge of the woods, eerily similar to the one we had hidden in years ago. We had a choice, face him or risk losing everything again. As I packed a small bag, my hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. We'll go, I said, but this time we don't go alone. And that night, we stepped into the dark, knowing it could be the end. The road to the cabin was silent, the trees on either side black against the moonlight. My son drove, his jaw tight, hand steady. Mama sat in the back, holding my hand like she used to when I was little. I could feel her pulse racing. Every bump in the dirt road felt like it was leading us closer to something we could never come back from. When we reached the clearing, the cabin stood there like a shadow. The windows were dark. No lights, no sound. My son cut the engine. The silence that followed was so heavy it pressed on my chest. I thought about turning back, but before I could speak, the cabin door creaked open. Lowell stood there. His face was calm, almost peaceful. That scared me more than anything. You came, he said softly, stepping into the moonlight. I knew you would. He spread his arms, as if we were family coming home. I just want to talk, he said. No tricks, no fighting, just talk. Every instinct in me screamed not to believe him. But we walked forward anyway because we had no choice. Inside, the air smelled like dust and old wood. A single lantern lit the room, casting long, flickering shadows. Lowell gestured to the table. Sit, he said. My son stood, refusing. Say what you came to say, he growled. Lowell's smile widened. I want to make things right, he said. I want to be part of this family again. I've changed. Mama's voice cut through the room like a knife. You destroyed this family, she said. You don't get to come back and pretend you didn't. Her hands were shaking, but her voice didn't waver. Lowell tilted his head, still smiling. I was sick, he said. Prison fixed me. I've paid for what I did. Isn't it time for forgiveness? The word forgiveness made bile rise in my throat. I stepped closer, my voice steady for the first time. You think a few years in a cell pays for everything you stole from us? For everything you did to Mama? To me? I pointed at the door. You need to leave. Tonight. For good. Or you won't walk out of here. His eyes darkened. The smile fell. Careful, he said quietly. Then, in one swift motion, he reached under the table. My heart stopped. My son lunged forward, grabbing him before he could pull whatever was hidden there. They fell to the floor, wrestling, the table crashing to the side. Mama screamed. I grabbed the lantern and held it high, ready to smash it. The fight was brutal. Fists, kicks, the sound of wood cracking under bodies. I could hear Lowell's breath, heavy and furious. Then my son shouted, "Run!" I didn't run. I slammed the lantern down. Glass shattered. Flames burst across the wooden floor. Smoke filled the cabin instantly. The fire roared, eating everything. Lowell screamed, his grip loosening. My son pulled me and Mama out into the cold night. The cabin burned behind us, the flames lighting the trees like dawn. For a moment, I thought I saw him still inside, fighting the fire itself. Then the roof collapsed. Sparks flew into the sky, and there was silence again, except for the crackle of burning wood. We stood there, watching it burn. My son's arm was around me, holding me up. Mama leaned on my shoulder. We didn't speak. We just breathed. And for the first time in years, I felt something heavy lift from my chest. Maybe it was over. Maybe the fire had swallowed him whole this time. But deep down, as the smoke curled into the stars, a question burned just as hot. Had we finally escaped him, or had we just made him angrier? The smoke from the burned cabin still hung heavy in the cold morning air when the sheriff arrived. His eyes scanned the blackened wreckage, then slowly moved to us, me, Mama, and my son, standing together like survivors of a war. He said nothing about Lowell, just asked if we were okay. I wanted to scream, wanted to shout the truth that the monster wasn't gone, that he was still out there, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Mama wrapped her arms around me, and I felt my tears break free. For years, we had carried this burden alone. Now, even with the sheriff watching, the weight remained. We have to move again, I whispered. My son nodded silently, his eyes burning with a fire I hadn't seen before. We knew the cycle wouldn't end unless we broke it ourselves. But how do you fight a ghost that keeps coming back? That afternoon, we packed our few belongings. Each suitcase felt heavier than the last, loaded with memories and fear. I looked at my children, their innocent faces a reminder of everything I was fighting for. I promised myself that no matter how many times we ran, this time we would stop running. We would fight. We had to. For them. For us. We left the small town under the cover of night, driving through empty roads, stars flickering above like distant promises. Oswin met us at a gas station on the edge of the county, a quiet man with steady eyes. He handed us a new set of keys to a tiny house miles away from anywhere Lowell could find us. This place is off the grid, he said. No one will find you here. Inside the small house, the walls felt bare, cold. But it was ours, finally. I unpacked slowly, every box a small victory. Mama cooked dinner, while my son sat at the window watching the dark woods. We need to be ready, he said softly. We can't wait for him to come to us. We have to find him first. That night, I lay awake, listening to the wind whistle through the trees. I thought about Lowell, how many lives he had broken, how much darkness he carried inside him. But I thought about us too, and the hope we still held. Maybe this time we could end the nightmare. Maybe the scars wouldn't define us anymore. Then, from the edge of the forest, came a sound, a soft footstep on dry leaves. I froze. My heart pounded like thunder. The past wasn't done with us. It was hunting us still. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen table, signaling Mama and my son to stay back. I stepped outside into the chill night, the beam cutting through the thick darkness. The footsteps stopped, replaced by a low voice calling my name. "Maribel!" It whispered, and my blood ran cold. There was no mistake, Lowell was close. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of smoke and rain. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What do you want?" I shouted into the night. Silence. Then a figure stepped from the shadows. It was him, gaunt, older, eyes hollow but burning with a cruel fire. "I came to finish what I started," he said softly like a prayer. The moonlight caught his face, revealing the scars and lines etched deep from years of rage and prison. I wanted to run, to scream, but my legs held me firm. "You don't own us anymore," I said. "You never did." He smiled, slow and cold. "You'll see," he said. "This family belongs to me." Behind me, Mama and my son emerged from the house, flanking me. We were no longer running. We stood as one. The night air crackled with tension. Lowell took a step forward, but my son raised his voice. "Stay back, or this ends badly for you." Lowell laughed, a bitter sound. "You think you can stop me?" He reached into his coat pocket. My heart stopped. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I've changed," he said, voice low. "I'm clean. I'm done running. I want to make amends." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, but something in his eyes told me this time was different. Mama took the paper, unfolding it slowly. It was a letter, handwritten, shaky but clear. He promised to leave us alone, to get help, to never hurt us again. For a moment, I felt hope flicker, weak but real. Then I saw the knife tucked behind his back. Before I could react, my son lunged. Lowell threw the knife, and chaos exploded. We fought, struggling for control. The knife slipped from his hand, skittering across the dirt. We pinned him to the ground. I looked down at the man who had stolen my childhood, my mother's dignity, and almost took my future. "Enough," I whispered. "This ends now." I wanted to believe it. I had to, because if it didn't, the nightmare would never stop. The dawn broke over the trees as we called the sheriff again. This time we stayed. We watched as Lowell was taken away, not just for the night, but for good. And as he disappeared into the back of the cruiser, I felt the first real breath of freedom in decades. But scars don't vanish overnight. They stay with you like old ghosts. And though Lowell was gone, his shadow would always be part of our story. A reminder of the darkness we survived and the light we found together. Even after Lowell was taken away for good, the house felt empty and hollow. The silence was thick like fog, pressing down on us in the mornings and choking the nights. I sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset bleed into the horizon, thinking about how long it had taken us to get here. Freedom was supposed to feel like a breath of fresh air, but all I felt was the weight of everything lost. Mama was quieter than usual, her hands always busy with something. Knitting, cleaning, fixing old furniture. Sometimes I caught her staring out the window with eyes far away, like she was somewhere else. My son carried himself like a man who had seen too much too soon. His shoulders were broad, but sometimes I saw him flinch, as if the ghosts of the past were still whispering in his ear. We started to rebuild slowly. I went back to work at the diner. My son took a job at the local hardware store, and Mama helped at the church once a week. Life moved forward, but the shadows never quite left. I'd wake up at night, heart pounding, thinking I heard footsteps on the porch or the soft creak of a door. Each time it was just the wind, but the fear was real. One evening, as I was closing the diner, a young woman came in. She looked tired and scared, eyes wide and searching. She asked if she could talk to me, and when I nodded, she sat down and began to tell me her story. She was from a town a few hours away and had escaped a man like Lowell. The same threats, the same fear. She had heard about my story and hoped maybe I could help. I looked at her, and in her eyes I saw a reflection of my younger self. Broken, desperate, but fighting. For the first time in a long time, I felt that fire inside me flare. We talked late into the night, sharing stories, plans, and hope. It was the first time I realized our story didn't have to end with fear. We could fight back, together. That night, Mama, my son, and I made a decision. We would start helping others like us, women and children trapped in the same nightmare. We couldn't change the past, but maybe we could change the future. I felt a new kind of strength, one born not from running or hiding, but from standing tall. But even as we made plans, I felt a chill. Because Lowell's shadow wasn't just in the past. It was everywhere. And some battles don't end until every scar is faced. Starting the support group wasn't easy. We met in a small community center, a quiet place tucked between the library and the post office. The first few sessions were sparse. Only a handful of women came, eyes wary and stories half told. But week by week more came. We shared food, tears, laughter, and pain. Each story was a thread, weaving us together into something stronger than fear. One woman, Trina, told us about her husband's jealousy that turned violent. Another, Cassidy, spoke of financial control and isolation. Their stories echoed mine and Mama's. Different faces, but the same darkness. We became a lifeline, a place where broken souls found a flicker of light. The community started to notice. Some were supportive, offering donations and space. Others whispered, judging, doubting, turning away. But we kept going because the women who walked through that door needed us. And every time a survivor found hope, it was like a small victory against the shadows. One night, after a long meeting, I stayed late, packing up chairs and wiping down tables. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. I turned, heart in my throat. Lowell. He was standing in the doorway, older, thinner, but with that same cold smile. "You're stronger than I thought," he said, "but you can't hide forever." My hands clenched into fists. "Leave," I said. "You're not welcome here." He stepped forward. "I'm not here to fight," he said. "I'm here to warn you. Stop this, or you'll lose everything you've built." The room felt colder, darker, but I stood tall. "You lost your chance a long time ago." He laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the empty hall. Then, just as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone, vanished into the night like a bad dream. But the warning lingered, a shadow over everything we had fought for. I knew then that Lowell wasn't just a man. He was the darkness we had to fight every day, in every moment, in every breath. But we had something he didn't, a family bound by love and a fire that refused to die. And so the battle continued. Not just to survive, but to live, to heal, to hope. Life had settled into a fragile rhythm, but the past always found a way to knock on our door. One evening, after a long day at the support group, I sat on the porch swing, the sky melting into twilight. My son was inside with Mama, laughing over a late dinner. For a moment, I allowed myself to breathe. The warm summer breeze brushed my face like a promise. Then the phone rang. My heart skipped. I didn't recognize the number, but something in my gut told me to answer. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar but steady, a woman introducing herself as Detective Rena Morgan. She said she was investigating a string of abuse cases linked to a man with Lowell's description. Apparently, he'd been living under a new name in a nearby town. I felt the old cold creep in my veins. "Are you sure?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she said. "We need your help to bring him down for good." That call changed everything. We were no longer just survivors. We were warriors. The fight we had tried to leave behind was coming back with a vengeance. But this time we wouldn't face it alone. Detective Morgan met us the next day. She was tough, but kind, someone who understood that battles like ours weren't just about arrests. They were about healing broken lives. She handed me a folder filled with reports and photos. Seeing Lowell's face again, marked by years of evasion, was like opening a wound I thought had healed. We worked closely with her, sharing everything we knew, his patterns, his tricks, his weaknesses. We mapped his movements, warned the women still trapped in the shadows, and prepared for what was coming. The nights were long, filled with whispered plans and phone calls that made my fingers numb. One night, as I sat alone in the dark, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number. "You can't hide forever." My hands trembled, but I didn't reply. Instead, I called Mama and my son. We locked the doors, checked the windows, and waited together. In that moment, I realized that Lowell was more than just a man. He was a symbol of the darkness we fought every day. But as long as we stood together, that darkness could never win. The raid was sudden. Police cars rolled up in the middle of the night, blue and red lights cutting through the darkness like knives. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding my son's hand, waiting for news. Detective Morgan had promised us they had him this time. That Lowell's reign of terror was finally over. Hours passed. The tension in the house was thick enough to choke on. When the phone finally rang, my hand shook so badly I nearly dropped it. It was Detective Morgan. "He's been arrested," she said, voice steady but tired. "Found him in a motel, trying to flee the state. We have evidence. This time it sticks." Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. For the first time in decades, I dared to believe it was truly over. Mama cried softly in the next room. My son squeezed my hand, a small smile breaking through the exhaustion. But even in that moment of victory, I knew the scars would never fully disappear. Lowell's shadow was etched into our bones, into our memories. The trauma we carried wasn't just about one man. It was about reclaiming our lives from a darkness that threatened to consume us. In the weeks that followed, I spoke at community events, sharing our story to give strength to others. The support group grew, becoming a beacon for survivors. We weren't just victims anymore. We were fighters, healers, and above all, family. One quiet evening, as I sat with Mama and my son watching the sunset, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we had each other, and that was enough. I looked into their faces, full of hope and resilience, and whispered a silent promise. We would never let the darkness win. Even after Lowell's arrest, the weight of our past pressed on me like a storm cloud refusing to pass. The days blurred into therapy sessions, support meetings, and court dates. Each visit to the courthouse felt like walking through fire. Every glance at Lowell in that cage stirred memories I thought I'd buried deep. But I held on to one thing, the future we were building, brick by brick. One morning, Mama called me early, her voice trembling. "They're releasing him on bail," she said. My heart stopped. I had hoped the system would keep him locked away, but the truth was harsher. He was out again, free to haunt us. Panic clawed at my throat. I spent the next days changing locks, installing alarms, and calling the police whenever I felt a shadow move too close. My son took turns staying with me and Mama, watching over us like a silent guardian. We had survived Lowell once. We would survive him again. Then came the letters. Letters with no return address. Just threats disguised as promises. "You can't run forever," one said. Another, "I'm closer than you think." The fear crept back, a cold hand squeezing my chest. I wondered how many others felt this terror, the invisible chains of abuse that never truly break. One night, after a group meeting, I walked to my car alone under a sky heavy with clouds. Suddenly, headlights blinded me from behind. A car slowed beside me. I recognized Lowell's shadow in the driver's seat before the engine roared and the car sped away. My knees buckled, but I stood firm. This time, I refused to be the hunted. I told Mama and my son the next day. We were scared, yes, but not defeated. I started carrying pepper spray, learned self-defense moves, and made sure the support group knew to be vigilant. Our fight wasn't just against one man anymore. It was against the fear he represented. But even in the darkest moments, I found strength in the smallest things: a child's laughter, a warm meal, a sunrise that promised new beginnings. And in that strength, I realized no matter how many times the past tried to pull us back, we were moving forward. Together, spring brought a fragile hope. The trees blossomed, and the air smelled of renewal. The support group held a picnic in the park, laughter mingling with birdsong. I watched women and children playing, their faces unmarked by fear. It was a glimpse of the future I had fought for, a world where abuse didn't define a life. That day, a woman approached me. She had tears in her eyes and gratitude in her smile. "You saved me," she said softly. "Your story gave me the courage to leave." Her words filled me with something I hadn't felt in years: pride. Not for me, but for the power of survival and the ripple effect of sharing our truths. But beneath the light, shadows still lurked. Lowell's presence lingered like a storm on the horizon. One evening, as I was closing the support group, I found a note slipped under the door. No words, just a single photo of my son. He was smiling, unaware of the danger. My blood ran cold. I called the police immediately, and they promised increased patrols. My son moved in with Mama for a while, and I stayed close, my senses on edge. The nightmare was far from over. Lowell's obsession had grown darker, more dangerous. One night, as I lay awake, I heard a noise outside. The window rattled, a shadow flickered. I grabbed the phone and called 911. The police arrived just in time to catch a man fleeing into the night, Lowell. He was closer than we thought. That moment shattered any illusion of safety, but it also steeled my resolve. I refused to live in fear. I wouldn't let Lowell win. We worked with the police and community, strengthening our defenses, spreading awareness. Our group became a fortress, a place where survivors found not just safety, but power. Looking back now, I see how far we've come. From broken children hiding secrets to a family unbroken, standing tall against the darkness. Lowell tried to steal everything, but he couldn't steal our spirit. And that is the true story of this grandma. The courtroom was packed the day Lowell's final trial began. I sat with Mama and my son, hands clenched tightly together, trying to steady my shaking heart. The years of fear, pain, and running had led us here. facing the man who had stolen so much from us and from others like us. Lowell looked thinner than ever, his face a mask of anger and desperation. But this time, he wasn't the predator in control. He was just a man finally caught in the web he spun. Witnesses came forward, women and children we'd helped through the support group. Their voices were steady, their stories raw but powerful. They spoke of abuse, survival, and hope. Each testimony chipped away at Lowell's defenses. When my turn came, I stood up, my knees weak, but my voice strong. I told the jury about the years of silence, the pain no one saw, and the courage it took to speak out. I spoke not just for myself, but for every survivor who still feared their story would go unheard. The judge's gavel echoed through the room as Lowell was sentenced to life without parole. The weight lifted off my chest felt almost unbearable. Relief mixed with the pain of memories that would never fade. Outside the courthouse, Mama hugged me tight. My son's eyes shimmered with tears. "It's over," he whispered. "We're free." But freedom wasn't just about Lowell being behind bars. It was about reclaiming our lives, healing wounds, and building a future on our terms. Years later, I sit on this porch, the sun warming my face, surrounded by the family we fought so hard to protect. My grandchildren play in the yard, their laughter filling the air like music. Mama's hands, though wrinkled, still hold steady, and my son stands nearby, proud and strong. Our story has become more than pain. It's a testament to resilience, love, and the power of never giving up. The support group we started is now a thriving community, helping countless survivors find their voices and reclaim their lives. Sometimes I think about Lowell, not with fear, but with sorrow. He was a man who chose darkness, but we chose light. We broke the cycle. We turned trauma into triumph. To everyone watching this story, I want to say, if you're hurting, if you feel trapped, you are not alone. Reach out. Speak up. There is strength in sharing your story. Please like, subscribe, and comment below with your thoughts and your own experiences. Your voice matters. Together, we can break the silence and build a world where no child, no woman, no family lives in fear. Thank you for listening to my story.